Bethlie and I always recommend to you mypillow.com.
Yes, we
And
do.
just this very day, we ordered some new slippers and house shoes and those kind of things.
I think those are called slides.
Oh, that's what they're called, slides. I ordered myself some slides. Bethlie ordered some house shoes.
Yes,
And
slippers.
we just absolutely love them. We love the sheets. We love the towels.
Yes.
And we especially like their house shoes. Just everything we've purchased from them, we really love it.
And the pillows, which
yes.
is what they are known
Their
for.
pillows, we like those as well.
Yes.
And if you've never visited mypillow.com, log in, use promo code YOUNG, Young.
Yes.
And they are an affiliate of ours. We're so thankful for their support, their kindness. Every purchase you make helps Keeping It Young podcast to stay on the air.
Yes.
And so we highly recommend it to you. We just have loved everything we've had there. Their product is just first class.
Yes.
And they're affordable. And it is amazing the discounts you can get using our promo code.
Right.
And so we highly recommend it to you. mypillow.com, promo code YOUNG. Check it out. We think you'll be glad you did. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Keeping It Young podcast, conversations about marriage, family, and ministry life. I'm Dave.
And I'm Bethlie.
And we are the Youngs.
I'm so happy that you've joined us today. We get to tell you about our Alaskan trip that we took for our 30th anniversary.
Absolutely. Just a few weeks ago, we celebrated 30 years of marriage, and it seems like it's just flown by. My goodness.
It absolutely has flown by.
And what a wonderful milestone. We're very thankful for that.
Yes.
And
I'm just sitting here thinking, I don't think we're quite old enough to have been married for 30 years.
We are not, but I feel like it at this particular moment. I feel like maybe
Okay.
I am. And but nonetheless, we took a little trip to Alaska for 13 days. We were going to take a cruise, and we decided that, you know what, we're too young for that. And so,
no offense to you who are listening who might be of a certain maturity.
Absolutely. And we would take a cruise in a heartbeat. But we
Yes.
just decided on this trip actually to fly into Alaska, rent a car, and just drive. And there was so many things we wanted to see. We had to narrow things down. And we actually, the 13 days were very full.
Very full, but
Absolutely.
I feel like we could go back for another month or two and still not see everything.
Everything that we wanted to see, for sure.
Right.
And my goodness, it was a wonderful trip. And because we just celebrated 30 years of marriage, and because we just finished the 16-week series on raising boys to be men and girls to be ladies, Beth and I thought, you know what an opportune time for us to just share maybe some wisdom, some practical matters about how we have, what we've done in 30 years of marriage to help our marriage to be what it is today.
And a happy marriage.
A happy marriage, a wonderful marriage. We like each other. We're happily married.
Even after 13 days alone together
Absolutely.
in Alaska. I have to tell you, one of my favorite things about the trip, and Alaska is gorgeous. We can't even describe it. Those of you who have been there, you know what we're talking about. It is so beautiful. It's as if every beautiful thing that God ever created, he just kind of tied a bow on it and put it in Alaska. It's just beautiful.
That's very true.
But one of my favorite things about the Alaska trip is that I had David's undivided attention for 13 straight days.
And she took full advantage of my undivided attention.
I did. We love what we do. We love what God has called us to do, but we're with people all the time. So we were alone up there. We didn't know anybody. We got to know a few people here and there on some of the tours, but really it was just us, and it was awesome.
The sightseeing was amazing.
Yes.
Just being together was amazing.
Yes.
And the food was incredible.
Oh, absolutely.
I think I had the best halibut and salmon that I've ever had. And it was just incredible. We just had a wonderful trip and highly recommend it to you. It was that for us, we have always celebrated our anniversaries, but we've never taken a 2-week trip like that.
Right.
And we are so glad we did. It was worth the saving and the effort and making it all come together. And we just highly recommend it. And we thought, what a great time to stop and maybe take a couple of podcasts here and talk to you about how we turned these 30 years into a great marriage. And that was something I thought about during our trip. And you know, there was nothing happens by accident. The one thing everybody agrees on is that a good marriage is not an accident.
Right.
And even for those who are, we're believers, we're Christians, we come at everything from a Christian worldview. But even folks who don't have a Christian worldview know that a marriage relationship takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of planning, a lot of care if it's going to turn into something amazing.
Absolutely.
And Beth and I just love, one of the things we love about our ministry is that we frequently meet meet people who love to share with us. They'll say, well, later this year, I met one just this week in Alabama, and the couple was like, later this week, we're celebrating, it'll be our 60 years. And my mom and dad are getting close to that.
Yes, they are.
And they're coming up on 60 years themselves. And you know what? Every marriage goes through seasons. Every marriage goes through challenges.
Right.
That's just how life is. We live in a sin-cursed world. There's no doubt about it. Two sinners marry one another. There's a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of potential for problems. And stats are not on our side.
No.
This week I was listening to a podcast I will frequently listen to called Art of Manliness. And the Art of Manliness podcast this week really intrigued me because it was a podcast about divorce, and it was based on a book written by a New York City divorce lawyer. And the interesting thing about this man was that he said almost nobody becomes a divorce lawyer on purpose. They end up there because they couldn't get another job here or that this didn't work out. But for some reason, he said it was something he always wanted to be.
Oh.
And it was just kind of a weird thing. It was kind of one of the unique things about the interview.
It kind of sounds sad to me.
He pointed out that overall, if you're talking about every marriage, third marriages, second marriages, fourth marriages, first marriages, the divorce rate is really high, way above 50%. And even in first marriages, the divorce rate this last year was 47%. And that's a pretty high percentage. And we don't take the same view he takes, but he had an interesting way of illustrating it that I thought was just amazing. He said, or intriguing rather. He said that getting married is almost like playing the lottery. Now, we don't play the lottery, so I thought, okay, this is an interesting analogy. But he said, most people, it's a huge gamble when you play the lottery because, there's a good chance you're going to lose. In fact, there's a higher chance you're going to lose than that you're going to succeed. And yet he said, if you play the lottery and win, the results of winning are out of this world phenomenal. They're amazing, they're intriguing, they're fun, they're just, everybody enjoys the story.
It's celebratory.
And, absolutely. And I just thought that was a unique, it's a worldly way of viewing it, but it did remind me listening to him that good marriages take a lot of effort, a lot of work.
Right. They don't happen on accident.
No, they don't. And so this is what we've been thinking about. How did we take these 30 years of our marriage and make them good?
And we don't take the view that divorce lawyer would take. Of course, we take a biblical view, whereas it's not a gamble. If you're going into marriage, praying about it, seeking the Lord's will, knowing both of you coming together with parental blessing and knowing that this is who God has for you, then you don't have to go into it with this black cloud hanging over you of, is this really going to work? You know that if you follow the word of God, you can make it work. I was thinking as we were going into recording this episode about Proverbs chapter 5, the verse that says, rejoice with the wife of thy youth, which does indicate that you are older now. So there was a time where you were young and you got married and everything was fresh and beautiful and new and exciting, but the Psalm seems to say that even as you grow older in marriage, you can rejoice together now that you're older, just like you did when you were younger. And absolutely. I love that because I think that's a reflection of what the Lord has allowed us to do in our marriage and what we like to do to help other people. Sure.
And really don't let any statistics or the negativity discourage you, because the Bible promise seems to be that if you and I will pursue God, if you and I will pursue the right investments, if you and I will continually work at our marriage, at love, and all the details that go into a marriage, the fact of the matter is anybody can have a great marriage.
Yes.
In fact, the Bible principles work so well that even people who are not Christians who follow the Bible principles will still have a great marriage and a great relationship.
True.
Because God just designed them to work that way.
True.
So don't ever think about marriage and think, well, we're not compatible or we can't make it work. No, anybody who wants to can make it work.
Yes.
And so let's get started and throw out a couple of ways that we made it work for us and things that we did that really paid off and was worth the effort.
And are still paying off.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And so let's start with the first one. What's the first one here?
The first one is learn.
The word learn. And here's what we mean by that. One of the things about our marriage is that Bethlie and I have continued to learn and grow.
Yes.
And if you've heard me speak much on families or marriage or anything like that, you've probably heard me say something about the number of books that Bethlie and I read about marriage and family and even the bedroom. We try to read books on marriage, and it's, there's a part of it in which we're studying. Obviously, we have a family podcast
yes.
and we speak a lot to couples, but the fact of the matter is we take any book and start first and foremost reading it for our own use.
Yes.
And often this is our format. I will read it, Bethlie will read it, and then we talk about it together. We take notes in it. I always enjoy reading her notes and saying, because Bethlie will not just highlight or underline, she will put comments in the margin or a sad face or a smiley face or a huge question mark. And an exclamation point, and so I always enjoy that. But what I realized is that we kept learning.
Yes.
And the other thing we did is we didn't just take advantage of books, we took advantage of the Bible principle of mentorship and eldership.
Yes.
And we found this truth in the Bible, that God has designed Christianity to work in such a way that we learn from those who are elders.
Yes.
And that's a very important matter. I know you teach on that a lot to ladies, about older ladies teaching younger ladies.
In the Titus 2 passage.
Touch on that for just a moment.
We talk about it all the time. And one of the things I was thinking as you were talking about, we always approach marriage from a learning standpoint, is it is really sad to meet a couple or maybe one spouse in the couple who feel like, well, I don't have anything to learn. I already know what to do here. Maybe they even are coming into their marriage thinking, I already know what to do here. I'm just going to do what my mom and dad did, and that worked for them, so surely it'll work for us. And it's a sad place to be if you think that you have arrived. One of the things I love about our marriage is that we do constantly learn. But one of the things I love about that Titus 2 passage that I talk about all the time is that there is opportunity to learn from the older people in your life. We are with pastors and their wives all the time. And I know many of our listeners, maybe you're not able to be with all of the different pastors and their wives that we have been able to be with, but that has been an excellent opportunity for us to be able to sit across the table from someone and ask questions, or even just to observe their marriage and watch how they do things sweetly, or some of the flirty things they might say to one another, or even, they just talk about, oh, we just took this trip together, or we do weekly dates together, or I come in twice a week and have lunch with him, or all the different things that you can just glean and maybe take and make your own. You can say, you know what, that's a really good idea. We're struggling with this area of our marriage, whatever it may be. Maybe we can take that idea and apply it in our marriage, and it will help.
Absolutely. And I've been thinking a lot about, all the people that taught us. Sometimes we just saw somebody and liked what they were doing and observed.
Right.
It wasn't like we had a conversation. We didn't have a meal. We just said, you know what? I like what they do. Let's incorporate that into our marriage. But there were others that we really on purpose tried to emulate.
Yes.
And I was thinking about like your mom and dad. One of the things we learned from your mom and dad was to have a fun, flirty marriage.
Yes.
And your dad and mom were always laughing and flirting with each other. And just, It was a really gentle, loving, happy kind of relational thing. Right. Mm-hmm. And then we, learned from my mom and dad. My mom and dad are not necessarily the flirty kind of couple, but very consistent.
Yes.
And they do things together.
Very faithful.
They are very consistent, faithful, and have, just stayed together through everything, just work things out very calmly. Mm-hmm. And we learned from that. But we invested by learning from, I guess in a sense we could say, those who are more of an expert. Mm-hmm. We would go hear teaching on marriage.
Oh, yes.
And we would, listen to people who understood the Bible and had lived it in their own lives.
Right.
And we would find out, what does the Bible say? What can we learn from them? Mm-hmm. There's a ton of opportunities we had to learn from other people.
Right.
I was just thinking, we just finished a meeting as we're recording this. We just have finished a meeting in Alabama, and we were with a couple of our older friends this week who are in their 80s. And I don't know, how long have they been married? Going on 60 years at least, right?
Oh, I'm sure it's probably over 60.
Yeah,
maybe.
and the thing I noticed about them, just observing this week, knowing that, we're talking about what we've learned from other couples, I like the fact that they laugh a lot together.
Oh, yes.
And he'll just say something and she'll laugh, and she'll say something and he'll laugh. They just laugh a lot together. If you're around them very long at all, you also find out that they pray a lot together.
Yes.
And they really, if they get a prayer request through the church prayer, whatever chain or however they get prayer requests, you have no doubt about it, the two of them just immediately start calling on God about it.
Yes.
And so they're very willing to pray together. They're, happy together. They cook together. They do a garden together. They can together. They have served in local church together.
Right.
And the thing that Bethlie and I are just trying to say to you here is that we are so thankful for all the people in our life that we've learned from.
Yes.
And that's a key word if you're going to have a great marriage. You have to keep learning.
Yes.
Nobody's arrived. Any of us can learn. And so if you got an issue in your marriage, maybe it's time to find a mentor. And you may not have all the churches. No, we know so many people. One of the great blessings of what we do is that we just are with people all the time.
Right.
So we've met some of the greatest Christians in the world and some of the greatest examples of marriage in the world.
Yeah.
But you need a local church that has great marriages, and find someone and talk about it. You and your spouse talk about it. What can we learn from them? And even go on a date and say, "Now, what do you think about that couple?
Right.
And what do you like about that, or what do you not like about that?" And don't attack each other. Learn together and grow together. That is a key word in making a marriage great. You have to keep learning.
You do.
What would you add to that?
I would say listen to Marriage and Family Podcast.
That is a great piece of advice.
Oh, a shameless promo right there for the Keeping It Young.
Oh,
but
my.
there are many more. And I do understand that you have to be careful. Some of them are not from a biblical standpoint. So you would want to research it, check it out, make sure that what they are teaching you comes from the Word of God. But there are several marriage podcasts out there that can speak in any area of your life, whether you're speaking about, we need to learn about this new season of life that we're going through, or we need to learn about communication, or we need to learn about the bedroom, or we need to learn about how to date when we're surrounded by children of our own making. What do we do? So you can listen to all kinds of different podcasts. Of course, I recommend ours, and we have a lot of different episodes. You can go back and scroll through, but there are so many materials available to us that we can continuously learn, continuously grow better in our marriage.
And I'm just going to take a moment here and say two things. First of all, you have to determine to grow. It will never happen by accident.
Right.
You have to learn on purpose. And whether that's buying a book and reading it, taking the time to go hear someone teach on marriage, whether it's asking someone questions, and don't be ashamed to do that. Godly people who love the Lord are willing to talk to you and give you practical advice and practical wisdom about what's going on in their life.
Right.
And so we just highly recommend that. And while we're at it, let's just take a moment here, since we're celebrating our 30 years. Let's just give a few shout outs. Of course, Bethlie's parents are in heaven, but shout out to them for what we learned there. My mom and dad, how thankful we are for them. We certainly enjoyed our years at Newark Baptist Temple in Heath, Ohio, under the teaching and influence of Pat and Susie Dalporto.
Absolutely.
We've mentioned them on our podcast before.
Yes.
But we're also thankful for people like David and Anna Tice.
Oh, yes.
And what we learned from Pastor and Mrs. Tice and their encouragement in our life. Pastor and Mrs. Rabin.
Oh, yes.
In Raleigh, North Carolina. We're just super thankful for them. And there'd be many others we could shout out to. We have always enjoyed people who have influenced us positively about our marriage, and we've learned.
And we learn straight away just being with them, because they are years down the road from us, and we see how happily married they are, and they're sweet to each other, and they enjoy each other's company, and they would be just as happy alone without us at dinner with them. You know, you can tell that in and of itself is an education. And so you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, okay, they're 10 years down the road from us. I really want to be like that when we're 10 years down the road.
Absolutely. So the first word is the word learn. Hey, everybody, if you have not yet visited thechurchcrew.com, Bethlie and I highly recommend that you do.
Yes, we do.
As we travel the country, one of the things we've noticed in local church is that getting volunteers all on the same page. Everything from the nursery to the grounds crew to the cleanup crew.
The hospitality crew.
If you take the time to download this program and put all of the information in, put everybody's schedule in real time, people can make changes themselves on the app, and then immediately it updates everybody. It finds replacements. It is well worth it, and it is highly affordable.
Yes.
Just incredibly well done and very affordable, very easy to use, and I think anybody in your church can use it. So if you have anything to do with volunteer staff in your church, thechurchcrew.com is the app for you.
Yes.
So check it out. We're very thankful for their support and their partnership with the Keeping It Young podcast.
Yes.
And just let them know how thankful you are when you log in and check them out as well. That's thechurchcrew.com. Let's give a second word.
Okay, let's talk about time.
Now, to have a great marriage obviously takes a lot of time.
It does.
And 30 years is a lot of time. And just having 30 years together never makes a great marriage. What we mean by this word time is the investment we have put into the marriage, the time that it took.
Right.
And time can be as simple as, just writing a love letter, or planning a getaway, or
Right.
even working through challenges together.
Yes.
We have to give our marriages the time they need to grow, to flourish, to work
Yes.
through things. And that's one thing I think the Lord has really helped me and you to do, is
Yes.
to invest time.
Yes.
And sometimes, it's just a little bit of time. When I travel, sometimes Bethlie takes the time to put notes in my luggage or in my Bible.
Right.
Or in my computer case. Sometimes I will leave notes for Bethlie. She has a Mary Engelbright type calendar. Is that what that is?
It's just a daily calendar where you rip off the
Yeah,
page.
and that's in the kitchen. So sometimes I'll go ahead when I'm gone, and if she's not going to go with me, and I will fill in, write something on each of the pages.
Right.
Try to throw a little humor in or something I'm thankful for. It does take time to write a note or to write a love letter. But, if you took the time to write a note to each other every day for 30 days and just said, I love this about you, I like this about you, or
Yes.
thank you for this, just that little time in 30 days would absolutely dramatically influence a marriage positively.
Yes.
And you do that for 30 years. And that's an amazing thing.
It is.
And I'm so thankful that one of the things we learned was to give time
Yes.
and to take the time. It takes time for a husband to stop by and, buy a rose. Or it takes time for us to think about, okay, now, coming up here in 2 weeks is this.
Right.
The time we put into planning this trip to Alaska.
Right.
Even that illustration. And time makes a huge difference in
It
a happy
does.
marriage.
It does.
What practical suggestions would you offer there?
Well,
I
I
mentioned
would
several.
say, just as a young couple, sometimes you feel like you don't have time for each other. And one of the things I've always appreciated about David is that no matter how busy we were, he would take the time to say, okay, we need to stop everything and talk, or we need to get someone to watch the kids so that we can go out, or we need to put the kids to bed early tonight so that it can just be time for us together. So there was always that emphasis on, oh, you know what, we're getting really busy and we need to focus on each other. And I know that can be hard, especially when you're a young couple, when you're both working or he's working full time, or maybe you're both in ministry and you're surrounded by children and you're just going. But it is worth the effort. I will say that I don't know, I can't imagine, because I've always known our marriage the way it is, but I can't imagine that we would enjoy 13 days alone together in the wilderness of Alaska if we had not taken the time to invest when we were married for 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, because we wouldn't have known each other as well.
Absolutely.
We wouldn't have taken the time to be like, well, hey, how are you? You don't want to wait until you've been married 30 years and maybe are empty nesters and then all of a sudden try to figure each other out again. You want to take the time when you're a young couple.
Absolutely. And let's give a little challenge here for you that are listening who are married. Do something this week that's an investment of time. And there's not a set. It's not like you need to spend an hour. It's not like you need to spend 2 hours or a whole day.
Right.
But maybe take a 5-minute time to send a text every day this week that's just unique to the two of you.
Right.
Or to set aside, we're going to do something extra this week just for us.
Right.
Or I'm going to buy something extra this week just for you.
Mm-hmm.
And those kind of that time is a key word to making a marriage amazing.
Yes.
And so the word is learn, and the word is time. We have time for one more,
All right.
and that's the word
talk.
Now, this one we could talk about for all day. couldn't
Right.
we?
And we have done some
And we have.
episodes on communication, but talking is essential.
It is one of the most difficult things to maintain in our culture. And we feel like we're so connected because we're staring at screens all the time. We're texting all the time.
Right.
We're always, often today we're together. And yet being together, because when we're together now, there's a TV on. When we're together, there's an Instagram account. When we're together, the list just goes on. There's TikTok, there's Facebook.
Yes.
There are so many things that being together doesn't mean we're communicating.
Right.
And one of the things that has to happen for a marriage to become greater every day that goes by is you have to talk. It's a big one, and it's one you have to continually work on. We
Yes.
connect to each other with our words. And we have to put down the phones. We have to turn off the TVs.
Yes.
We have to look at each other, and part of talking is listening to each other.
Right.
If we don't take the time to hear each other's concerns, each other's burdens, each other's challenges, each other's opinions, if we don't take time to listen to each other, to look into each other's eyes, to hear each other's heart, then our marriage will not be what it ought to be.
Right.
And sometimes that takes humility.
Yes.
Sometimes it takes gentleness and patience and love.
Right.
And so there's nothing that can replace this idea of talking.
True.
And it's a gift from God.
It is.
I know we've said that so many times on our podcast. The communication is one of the greatest gifts that God gave to us.
Right.
It makes our marriages sweeter. It's what makes it flirty. It's what makes it fun. It's how we solve problems. Not that we ever have any, but when we do occasionally have a little hiccup in the marriage, talking is the key to all of that. And man, there's so many things we can talk about in a marriage in there.
Yes, there are. And honestly, I would urge you, again, you young couples, get beyond the to-do list. And you know how that goes. First thing in the morning, you're like, what do you need to do today? And who do we need to run to the doctor? And who needs to run to practice? And what needs to be gotten at the grocery store? And so that's basically the extent of our talking. And then we're so surrounded by children and schedules and all of those things. Sometimes we can go days without having a true conversation. And so I would urge you, take the time that it takes to sit down and have a true conversation. So how was your day? What was the best thing in your day? What was the worst thing in your day? What would you like to see happen tomorrow? How can I help you? And just things like that, asking the questions and listening to one another's hearts and becoming bonded that way.
Absolutely. And Bethlie mentioned you younger parents, but just you that are empty nesters or getting older or middle-aged, talking is still a massive key.
It is.
And you need to care about each other by talking. You ask, how are you doing?
Right.
And you share your heart with each other and things that you're learning and things that you're wanting to do better. And that the communication side of a marriage, it is impossible to have a great marriage without it.
Right.
It is absolutely impossible. And I know some of you are probably new to our podcast, and if you've never heard this before, one of the things that Bethany and I learned about communication is that there are some unique challenges about our generation because of our cell phones. And if you are in the midst of a conversation that's just casual, it has the chance to become meaningful. But it does not become meaningful without about a 7-minute foundation of small talk.
Right.
And because of our culture, if the TV's on, it's impossible to get there because, you can have a conversation where, you say something, but then your attention goes back to the TV.
Right.
And then you return to say something else, your attention goes back. The same thing's true with our phones. If you have a smartphone, if you have a watch, a smart watch, and you're in the middle of just a casual conversation, but all of a sudden you get a message or a text from, somebody at the office or one of the kids, and automatically you look at it, you've interrupted the talking, and now you're distracted, and you've interrupted the foundation necessary.
Right.
So one of the things our forefathers did better than we do is they did not have all the distractions that would keep them from talking to each other.
True.
And, when they would get in a horse and buggy and have to ride 3 hours to go to town, it was quiet and there were no distractions and all you had was each other.
Right.
And so we recommend that. If you're going to have a happy marriage, then here's the first 3 lessons we wanted to give you. This is how we believe we turned 30 years into a great marriage. We started with the word learn. Man, we kept learning and learning and learning and growing, and we still are.
We do.
And, as you go through every season of life, we've learned. There's times that something has come up and we're like, wow, we don't know what to do here and why, what's going on here. And just calling someone that we love and respect and asking has given us wisdom. It takes time. So investing of time. And then the word talking.
Yes.
And if you'll join us next week, we'll give you a few more ideas here, just some other things. How did we turn 30 years into a great marriage? And we're going to talk to you next week about the word solve. We solved every problem. About the word love. Probably could have put that one at the top of the list. The word commitment and the word care. And so hope you've enjoyed this. Just a little, a little bit different for us over the last few weeks as we've gone so deeply into a pretty heavy conversation about training boys and girls and all of that. We wanted to take a little break and just in celebration of our 30-year anniversary talk with you a little bit about marriage. Any final thoughts before we go?
I don't think so. I think we can wrap it up next week, maybe, or at least continue next week.
Okay. Well, thank you for listening to Keeping It Young. We're so happy to have you on our podcast, and we look forward to joining you next week. In the meantime, serve the Lord with gladness.
The Keeping It Young podcast is a Bax 5 Media production.